speak today, there are people being killed in some parts of Benue and some parts of Plateau. It happens every day. And of course, this is in furtherance of the jihad. So you have Islamist terrorist groups who operate under different names. Some are called Boko Haram. They are major stations in the northeast part of Nigeria. Some are the ISWAP, that's Islamic State West African Province. These are scattered across northeast part of Nigeria and northwest part of Nigeria and middle belt of Nigeria. Then you have the Ansaru and the Lakurawa. And the most dangerous, the most evilish, the most vicious of them all, the Fulani ethnic militia. So, sometimes when you say bandit, it's quite a mischaracterization, It's a euphemism of calling these terrorist organizations. So whatever is being perpetrated in the southern Kaduna axis is always perpetrated by the Fulani ethnic militia, a terrorist organization that is so vicious and so intent on wiping the Christian communities and occupying their land and exuding dominance. So that's exactly what's happening.
For those who got to hear about these incidents of recent, can you give us, go back into history? When did they start?
Well, if we want to go back to history, then it has to be about 200 years ago, the Ottoman Dafodio Jihad, when the man burst out of Fouta Djallon in Guinea, came to the Hausa territories, wiped out the Hausa territories, took over the territories of Hausa people who were actually practicing Islam. So you could see that the jihad was has a different motive, because they were doing it in the name of spreading Islam. But the Hausa communities that were taken over that time in the 19th century, early 19th century, starting from 1804 in Gobir, were already practicing Islam. So, but these guys brought a different kind of Islam, a very radical form of Islam, and fought the jihad to be able to install that kind of ideology. And then they went all the way to Kwara, took over Ilorin, which, as you all know, was up to this moment is Yoruba territory. And they came to Middle Belt. That is where they felt. They fell to the Christians in Plateau, the Birom, the Angars, they couldn't penetrate them. And they met the Waterloo in Benue State in the hands of the Tea people. So I think they are carrying out that vendetta, that the fact that we were able to stop their progression to the southern part of Nigeria. So they really want to continue from where they stopped. So that is the genesis of this whole thing, And at the point of independence, the Sardauna of Sokoto, the premier of northern Nigeria at that point, Sir Ahmadu Bello, was attributed to have said that this entity called Nigeria is the inheritance of their forebears. That's the inheritance given to them right from the time of Ottoman Danfodio. And so they will have to take charge of it, and they must strive as much as possible to dip the Quran in the Atlantic Ocean. So you could see the timelines. And then going up to the mid-1980s, when General Babangida registered Nigeria as a member of the Organization of Islamic Countries, or Corporation, OIC. We are a secular state, but you could see that they took us into an OIC, and then by gradual process again in 1999, October 1999, when the civilian administration in Nigeria was barely 4 to 5 months old, in 1999, Sani Yerima, the governor of Zamfara, introduced Sharia in a secular country like Nigeria, which the Constitution in Section 10 outrightly prohibits the adoption of any religion as a state religion, But those guys violated this aspect of the Constitution and adopted Sharia. And so Nigeria now begins to have a parallel legal system. One is the secular and one is the Islamic law. So you could see that was how this. So, but the violent aspect of it started around 13, 14 years ago. Because you could see, I started by giving you the background and how they've been using state policy to gradually come in, So, but of course, before you overwhelm a people, especially modern times like this, state policy alone cannot work. So you have to adopt hit and run, sort of, so that instill fears. That's how terrorists operate all over the world. What they do is they try to instill fears, and then the people will leave their territory and move backwards, and then they'll occupy. So that's what they've been doing. That's exactly what happened in Turkey. I think they are executing the Turkey model, when Turkey, as an overwhelmingly Christian state in those years, when it was known as Anatolia, these guys were hitting, and then that's how the religion is becoming steadily erased. And at the end of the day, it has become totally erased, to the extent that today, Turkey, which was overwhelmingly a Christian country, is the Christian population in Turkey currently is less than 1%. So that was the same modalities they took. And so they came to our land they're using the pretexts of farmer headers crisis, like they're clashing with farmers. But for goodness sake, that is our land. So it's not like these guys have a separate community that is next to us and we're clashing with this community. That is what amounts to communal clash. When you have a community that is sitting next to us, and then so you can't just invade our land at any time and then start killing people, and then you call it communal clashes, farmer header crisis. That was how it started. But by 2013 and 2014, they brought these guys in their thousands all across the Sahel. Fulani ethnic militia, the most dangerous of these Fulani fighters. They brought them as a build-up to the election of 2015. This is quite a popular fact, a fact that has already been well adumbrated by even the guys in APC, the guys who were part of it. They were able to reveal this truth. But some of us knew when these things were happening, because my community borders Nasarawa State. Yeah, my community borders Nasarawa State. And so we were seeing these foreign fighters, because at every point, these guys speak French rather than English. And that was when they started killing many of the chief people in Nasarawa State. And then the then governor of Nasarawa State, Al-Makura, who was the only CPC governor in Nigeria at that point, was calling them foreign hunters. But they brought them and placed them in Nasarawa, the forest of especially Nasarawa South, to prepare them ahead of the election in 2015. They saturated this forest of southern Kaduna, southern Katsina with these guys. So that was the beginning of this whole thing. Many of those guys came from Niger, from Chad, from Central African Republic, the Fulani in Guinea, in Mali, and they brought them to Nigeria. And right now, these guys have been given every form of ID to make them Nigerians. So that is the height of the whole thing. It's reached its crescendo at this point, that they've saturated our forest, and in order to take over, they have to be doing exactly what they are doing right now, to be killing, and then people will be moving to the IDP camps, and they'll be occupying, then they'll be killing. That is just the story behind this.
So you mentioned IDP camps. How many of them are in Benue State? Do you know how many people are in those camps? And if you have a drone satellite image of Benue, how will you say it has changed from 2014 to now?
Okay, from the official figures from the Benue State government itself, the people in the IDP camps are about 600,000, but I know that they are the excess of 1 million. That's from the official figures by the government. They are carrying 600,000. But in truth, they are excess of 1 million. The IDP camp, and again, You know, a man is an IDP when he doesn't stay in his own place. So there are a lot of people in the IDP camp, and then many others who may not be in the IDP camp, but they've been dislodged from their communities, and so they are staying with relations or friends in other parts of the state. Like in my community of Yelwata, many of our people, like even within my own family, within my own my father's nuclear family, there are some of my siblings in the IDP camp right now. And then some are with my younger brother, and some are in our own house in North Bank, part of Makoti. So you see, they are divided into three. So if you take the figures of just the people in the IDP camp and say this is the number of IDP, you may be wrong, because there are a lot of people who may not be in the IDP camp, but who are staying with relatives in the city, but are not staying in their own ancestral land where they were dislodged. So the number of IDP is in excess of 1 million.
So what happens when people leave their homes and their villages to go to IDP camps? What happens to those villages? They're vacant?
Yeah, there are a lot of